Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the very first IFA Archive Open House. As some of you know, IFA, or India Foundation for the Arts, is an organization that supports, promotes, and implements projects across the country in the arts and culture. And we support work that crosses boundaries, regions, languages. We've been doing this for the past 26 years. The outcomes of these projects as books, periodicals, academic material, workshops, archives, productions, performances, films are out there in the public domain as material that you can see, listen to, experience. About 6 years ago, when we just stepped into our 20th year, we wondered what could we do special? What could we do that would mark the milestone of 20 years of our effort of sustaining the arts and culture sector and the incredible work that our grantees and project coordinators had been doing. We didn't want to do a party, we didn't want to do a festival, because we felt that these would be short-lived, their memories quickly forgotten in the deluge of events that generally happens in the arts and culture sector. So we wanted to do something that was sustainable, that added value to what we were already doing, and that would be also a gift to the sector. So we decided that we were going to build the IFA archive, an archive that would contain all the materials that are produced in the work that our grantees and project coordinators did. These would be different kinds of text, audiovisual material, games, codes, performances, recordings, photographs, images, moving images, all kinds of material that are related to the outcomes of the projects that received our support, that we partnered over the years. Obviously, the copyright of all this material lies with the people, the scholars and the artists who make the work, but they give us the permission to host it with us so that they can be accessed and with their permission in due course used for various things. We created a plan for 10 years, divided it into phases and said that this is how the IFA archive is going to look. This is what we would put up, both as a physical and as an online archive that people can access. We are right now in the 6th year, and already there are over 350 projects that you can find on our online website, which is the online digital archive. And you can visit Bangalore and see our physical archive as well. So we are very proud that we got this going, and we feel that in another 4 years, we will have everything that IFA has ever partnered and supported to be on this space. But you know, something as huge as this, an initiative that is so big, so challenging, so needing resources, cannot be done unless we find people who believe in it, people who see the value of the material that we are going to put out there, and people who feel that this work that the artists and scholars have done are important to remember, are important for their afterlife, so that others who come later can access them and use them. And we found our partner in Aarti Logia, who through her trust, the Indorama Charitable Trust, supported the making of this archive from day one. Even before we had this going online, when we presented our plans to Aarti, and she became a partner on this project, not just as a donor, which was very important because without the money that the trust gave us, we couldn't do this, but also in terms of the ideas that went into building this archive and making it what you see of it today. I'm delighted that Aarti is here with us today from Serbia, and she's joining us to say a few words. Aarti, share a few words about what you think of the archive and your association with IFA.
Thank you, Arundhati. Wow. You know, the first reaction in my body is that, you know, my chest sort of swells with pride. You know, hearing you speak about the archive right from its inception to now, the ideas behind it, the people behind it, the team behind it, and what we are supporting, who we are supporting, how important it is to support this kind of work in India. So it really, fills me with a lot of pride. I'm so fortunate to work with yourself, your team, Menika. I was, quite young when this project started. So you have given me such an amazing experience of growth and even direction. Frankly speaking, the archiving space was very new, but really from IFA, I used to live in Singapore, I moved to London, but with this IFA archiving project, it has opened so many doors in the archiving space. I'm able to talk about you to an institute like MoMA in New York, to the National Gallery in London, and to many such very, world-renowned, prestigious, respected art institutions. So it's really all started from you. So I think I have probably learned more from you guys than you have gained from us. And I really hope to continue this very beautiful collaboration. I'm really very fortunate to be in this collaboration with you. Our foundation is in, gratitude to you to handle this project so well. And really, I hope we go from strength to strength and make this something something that Indian artists, because it's quite, grassroots level as well. You're documenting everything. We're not picking and choosing who we feel is important. It's across the board. And I really love that. And it's going to be such a massive treasure trove and, a source of information, a complete source of information for so many artists who are doing research, students, college students, people who just want to look at archives. So I'm really very, very proud. I won't take up much time. So thank you for having me. Please excuse if my voice is breaking. I have no Wi-Fi where I am. But thank you so much, Arundhati. I'm so, so happy that I could make it. Thank you.
Thanks, Aarti. We deeply appreciate not just your funding, but your commitment to this whole process of archiving. So thank you so much. I will now request Pranav to show our audiences some images of the physical archive, because obviously you can't be in Bangalore right now. But I do hope after seeing these images, whenever you come to Bangalore next, you do visit our archive. Pranav, may I request you to show the images?
Yes, thank you, Arundhati. Good evening, everyone. I'm Pranav, part of the IFA archive team. And before I hand the session over to Biswadeep, I'd like to say a few words about the archive. The IFA archive was launched in 2018 and holds a diverse material of the project supported and implemented by IFA over the years. Please note that the archive is a work in progress, and the online space holds materials from 2005 to 2018, with more materials at the physical site. And to visit our website, please log on to www.theifaarchive.org. And now I would like to show everyone a glimpse of a physical space in Bangalore. Thank you. So that was our physical space, and now I would like to invite Biswadeep over to go on with the session. Thank you, Biswadeep. Yeah.
Thank you, Pranav, and good evening, everyone. As the archivist at IFA, it gives me immense pleasure to launch today as part of the public engagements the IFA Archive Open House, focusing on conversations around the archival materials we have in our vast repository. We hope over these sessions, we are able to share some of these materials with you in all their complexity and diversity and motivate many of you to visit our archive. We also hope that these sessions will engage with questions and concerns that arts and culture archives raise, thus bringing into the discourse new ideas and many new arguments. For our first session today, we have with us Epsita Halder and Abul Kalam Azad. Epsita Halder is an associate professor at the Department of Comparative Literature at Jadavpur University, Kolkata. Epsita received an IFA grant under the Bengali Language Initiative in 2010 to research into the Karbala battle narratives recounted during Muharram through songs across different districts of West Bengal. These songs are viewed as a part of a performative tradition that interprets and internalizes the history of the Shia community. Abul Kalam Azad is an eminent photographer and visual artist based in Kerala. Abul received the IFA grant under the Arts Practice Program in 2016. This grant supported Abul to create a body of photographic works that provides a contemporary visual interpretation of Ilango's Shilappadikaram, the renowned Sangam literature epic in the ancient village of Pompuhar in Tamil Nadu. Epsita and Abul will first present their works, and then Arundhati and I will join them in a conversation. We will take audience questions at the very end of the session. Now, without further ado, I'd request Professor Epsita Halder to please take the stage.
Thank you, Vishwadeep, for your kind introduction, and I thank the India Foundation for the Arts for making me a part of this exciting panel. Now, let me tell you how it all started. I was working on the multiple narratives of Imam Hussein's martyrdom in the Battle of Karbala in Bangla literature. And after a painstaking hunt in a number of archives, I managed to find out several of them, from the 17th century scribal manuscripts to the volumes of cheap print to modern Karbala poetry written in Sanskritized Bangla. But suddenly I realized that I did not know what he, Imam Hussein, actually became. Though every year he was remembered by the Shias through copious tears along with the reading of the elegies, generally called Marsiya or Noha. Occasionally men shed ritual blood, khun matam, to connect them with Hussein's martyrdom. But who was Imam Hussein? Who are the Shias? To find out the trails of Imam Hussein, the best way was to take the local transport. So traveling with regular commuters, milk cans, baskets of vegetables, crates of eggs, in overcrowded buses and trekkers gave me the thrill of being a detective. In the beginning, there was no prior route map. Most of the times, I actually followed my intuitions, and my venture was decidedly impromptu. Say, I was talking with a junior teacher of a Shia Maktab Etim Khana in some remote village called Shornia, where the students were sharing with me elegies, that is Nohas via Bluetooth. Suddenly on the corridor wall, I saw a small poster belonging to another Imambara. Nobody referred to that Imambara, and I decided to head over there. And many things unfolded over there in Bokchara Imambara. That is, I discovered a very old lady as the repository of, Nohas, in her, recorded in her memory, almost 200 Nohas that I, heard from her. So my route emerged as I moved forward. It was like I was collecting the clues all along and arranging them. What I realized is, though the Ashura, the 10th day of Muharram, is a public ritual with all its visual and sonic frenzy, the entire picture of Shia grieving remained invisible, and its significance in the nuanced formation of the community identity unaccounted. As it sung, every land is Karbala, believe me, actually every Shia village has a Karbala field and a pond nearby, where all the taziyas, that is the replica of Hussein's coffin, carried by the grieving men, go for final immersion. And there are the Imambaras, a sacred site for collective gathering for regular mourning rituals, but no one actually could tell me who are the Shias and how these mournings were being done. But just think about this. In a land, say Bengal, which does not even have a formal history of the mosques, which as religious sites are more predominant in terms of their sonic and visual publicity, how can we expect a history of Shia religiosity which is inherently doubly minoritized? And other than the Ashura procession, all the other rituals happen in the interiority of the Imambaras. Again, another ignored site where the rituals remain invisible. So instead of normative and institutionalized history, I was bound to create an archive of memory, an archive of the senses. The narrative of history emerged as the experience of sound and visual of grieving through the arrangement of relics and other artifacts to restage the memory of the Karbala. So that was our archive here. My journey, thus, was to collect the multisensory, material, embodied and aesthetic forms of Shia religiosity. I recorded the sermons of the individual Zakira and reading of the Nohas by groups of women and documented the ritual objects arranged inside the Imambaras. Let me show you a few glimpses from my collection, from the IFA collection. For the gender segregated nature of the morning rituals, I could access the female quarters, which means I had the access to the most private domain of the ritual. The first set of the slides will be from a district, North 24 Parganas, from the villages, namely Mandra and Narkelberia, where the Shia community is Bangla speaking. So the first slideshow. The second state is from Kolkata, and the Shia community here is Hindi speaking. Some of them were also Urdu speaking as they had settled in Kolkata from Lucknow and its surroundings. But nowadays, no one uses Urdu for everyday communication. It's basically Hindi. So it's a next set of slides from the Kolkata chapter. From the enmeshedness of the everyday and the sacred, as I have just shared with you through the visuals, it is already clear that any itemization of any particular ritual as a piece of song or performance isn't possible. What is important in this archive is how people gather and bring in their everyday lived life to act upon the space, and finally create the space as a sacred space to achieve ritual ecstasy. Such a framing of all these forms of action in and around the Imambaras, expressed physically or virtually on social media sites, considers religious objects as cultural artifacts. These contribute to the dynamic identity formation of the community, its negotiation with the public space, mainstream cultural hegemony, and strategic positioning of its ritual articulations vis-a-vis the dominant Sunni discomfort, if it can be put this way. Here is a small morning session from a village in, again, North 24 Parganas named Kausha. I need to mention here that as the Shia community is diverse in its linguistic affiliations and migratory moves, it has multiple classes within as well. So if we talk about the migratory moves, if we look at West Bengal, there are the settlement of the Shias coming from different parts of the world for the last 200 years, like from Iran, from, say, the western part of India, Gujarat and Rajasthan, then from Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and also from the southern, parts of the country, especially from Karnataka. So here I have chosen to share the morning ritual of a group of women belonging to a particular class. So it will be the performance of a Noha. So now let me confess. In the beginning, I was absolutely tempted to do something completely different. I wanted to make a non-fiction film on this totally unfamiliar and unexplored performance of grief, like, say, Kabira Khada Bazaar Mein. I also wanted to make one of blood and tears, In Search of Imam Hussain, or something more dramatic to get at least one special jury mention at some international film festival. But let me tell you, even after so many years, with such a collection of unexplored sonic and visual material, why I have remained an unknown scholar without an acclaimed documentary film directed by me? Because I realized gradually that Imam Hussein was not a free cultural symbol. All the stories, voices, and actions embedded in the ritual performances cannot be transformed into a public cultural discourse as it were. There is a limit to knowing and a limit to representation. There is the question of ethics involved in it. That is the definition of our archive. As intimate gendered rituals, there was a limit to record, even if I could experientially access the female rituals. And even if I was allowed to record, for the women wanted to help me write a book on Muharram, it was not for public sharing. Secondly, though I was treating ritual expressions as nuanced art forms, they could not be taken out of their sacred calendar and space and decontextualized to be recorded as items. Their meanings were embedded in the ritual context. Moreover, when the female majlis began, daylight started to wither, and when the tube lights were switched on to light up the interior of the Imam Baras, their glow reflected on the whitewashed walls, reducing glare on the camera lenses, washing away calculated aperture, exposure, etc., etc. There was no scope to change my position, to manipulate with the light. The handheld camera shook as women beat their chests, vigorously chanting Hussein's name. The camera could not capture a wider composition of the tight proximity of women because I could not disturb the ritual midway. I also could not take a crew in the private mourning and disturb the logic of the sacred. So I had to leave the dream of some jury award then and there. I realized with humility that though these are artistic formations, my archive was based on the logic of gendered privacy and ritual exchanges. And my role was only that of a rag picker. I can't be the possessor of knowledge, and my archive became a quilt day by day, made of various patches coming out of different times, stitched together with different groups of women who graciously allowed me to sit with them, listen to and watch, and then finally share the tabarruk, the food and ruabza offerings to Imam Hussein. As my deliverable to the IFA, I was supposed to write a book, which I failed to deliver at the end of my 2 years of grant. I wasn't ready, and the experience had been too overwhelming for me. But I gave the IFA all the audiovisual recorded material that I had collected in these years. I continued to walk following the footsteps of Shia men and women to understand their love for Imam Hussein. In the last 10 years, social media proliferated, changing patterns of listening, viewing, and participating in the majlises, bringing in paradigmatic shifts in the understanding of interiority and publicity of ritual material. And I'm really thankful to Arundhati, who actually understood my position and told me that submit the manuscript whenever you are ready. So I end here by saying that now I can see a design and I think I am ready. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Haldar. Now I'd request eminent photographer and visual artist Abul Kalam Azad to please present.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? It's okay?
Yes, Abul,
Yes,
very
Abul.
clearly. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you everyone, and thank you very much for IFA and their team. So my story is began with my childhood. This because we were very small age. My parents, basically my father's, talk about this Tamil literature, Tamil literature, and Tamil land, Tamil culture and everything. So I was, after that I grew up and I lost touch with this old thing. And I was in London, I was in Delhi, that one 2000, I came back to Kerala. So I thought, I will do something related to my own culture, my search, my life search, what it is. So I find out a couple of books in our own library. My father had a huge Tamil literature library. So I thought, I will look for something, which I can find. So I will look and I find out this book called Silappadigaram. It's a classical Tamil poetry book. So I start reading. I could not understand any single word about that because it is very hard, old Tamil. It is not like what is now we are contemporary Tamil is not like that at all. So I asked my father, and he said, this is all about maritime history, maritime, so that he explained to me about, we also came in during the maritime to India from Turkey. So I was very curious. Oh, this is new for me. So I was looking, what is this, So he talked to me about, we were horse riders and, soldiers for these southern Indian kings and, dynasties. So because, this southern India, nobody know how to keep the horses and, horses were very important fact of, this ruling their dynasty. And, Lord wars, these people are, these all three dynasties are all the time warring, so that, they needed these horses. So I was, into very interested again and again because it was, 2,000, 4,000 years old story. So I don't know, how can I find anything on that? So again, and reading in this book, and I try to get a translation of this Silappatikaram in English or Malayalam, or it is very impossible. And I got help from my grandfather. He started talking to me little. These are the thing, these stories start from Pugar, this place called, ancient seaport called Pumpukar. Then that is still existing in Tamil Nadu. Then other part of the story is happening in Madurai, other also in Tamil Nadu. The third part is happened to be in last part in Kerala. So in 2000, I start photographing in a temple called Kodungalur Bhagavati Temple. There's this character, this lady, this epic have 3 or 4 character only, main characters, and the two is one is a lady and another one is a man. So this lady is worshipping in Kodungalur. Her name is Kannaki. I heard about this story. So I thought, I will go there and look. I go there, I will show you something. I go there and, I will look, this spectacle, the man and woman wearing a red cloth and, turmeric and you name it, so visually powerful. And they are in a trance. They were, cutting themselves there, the sword. It's completely one side is very much sexually activated. Other thing is so primitive and, everything make me I was about to photograph, but I could not photograph that here. Then, next year, this Bharani festival, I reached there and I slowly start photographing this. I will show the screenshot. Just a minute. So I call it as story of love, desire, and agony. This is the first part. I call it Black Mother. It's 99 to 2001. So like that, it was like almost, I pass on, I started in 2000. It is almost, like 14 years after. I still wanted to complete this project. I decided I will make this project in a 5-part. So I wanted to do a next part, which is, like this Ilango Adigal was living when he was composing this epic in place called Madilagam. I thought, like he will be maybe looking this all characters from local, and his heroine maybe like he find out from there only. So I thought I will make some photographs of women in Madilagam. I started working in 2014 and it's ended in 2015. Finally, I wanted to again, I wanted to complete this work. Those time, I was not working and, I was having a big difficulty for money. So I approached IFA for, my third part to make is Men of Pugar. Pugar is the place which is the epics begun with. There is this stories about, a merchant man and his wife, Kannagi. They were, living there and, in Pugar, and this merchant man fall in love with another dancer woman called Madhavi. And, he lost his wealth and everything. And, he's completely lost his money and everything. And, he came back to his wife, Kannagi, and told her, I lost everything. And she said, okay, we will go to Madurai. Madurai is the flourishing town. Those time, it's Pandyan town. We go to Madurai. Like that, that is the situation about this Pugar. Pugar is, I made almost, thousands of images in the help of IFA. It was an amazing small, like what you call fishing hamlet. It was, you look, the images are, so this is my work. I have I am very pleased to IFA to help me to do this work. And I have other 2 episodes also in this. I will keep on working. I don't know how long it will take to complete. So this is my story. I will just
Thank you, Abul, for such a wonderful presentation, and thank you, Epsita, as well. Now I would request Arundhati to please join us.
Yeah, maybe we can go to the panel mode now, right? With all 4 of us. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Backend will put us all on a panel now.
Yeah, we are. Yes.
We are?
Yes.
Okay. Great. So you want to start, Vishwadeep? With...
You start, Arundhati, and I'll follow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks so much, Epsita and Abul. That was fascinating. I think the one thing that really came home to me, Vishwadeep, seeing the material like this is the hard task that you and the archive team had, because the diversity of material and the diversity of our understanding, their context, is so complex that we have to be so careful, as Ipshita and Abul have both expressed in their presentations. We have to be so careful with this material. So that is what struck me. The first thing, I mean, we've all seen this material many times, but being talked about like this in this context just puts a different spin on the whole thing. So I have one, I want to begin with one question to Ipshita. Ipshita, as you were talking about the ethics involved in the manner in which this material can be seen, and that film that never got made, I was wondering, what do you see as the afterlife of this work? What do you have in mind, or things that you are doing currently as a prolonged life or afterlife of this work, or how you see possibilities of others taking it up? I know we've had conversations about your ideas about the community. So just share a little bit of what's going on in your head about the afterlife of this material.
Thank you, Arundhati, for this question, because I need to reiterate here that when I'm talking about the ethics and limits of knowledge, the ethics of the sacred and the limits of knowledge, then I'm not talking about any sort of insularity of this kind of privacy. Of course, this is so embedded in its context that we need to be very careful. But there should be academic and artistic intervention as well to bring this material out of its confinement to perhaps be interpretive to the community as well. So what I have been doing, that is a kind of rigorous academic kind of engagement with this material. So primarily that this kind of archive can stimulate various questions in terms of methodologies of ethnography, ethics of ethnography, understanding the connection between the religious processes and urbanity, or the making of the community in the context of bigger, making of the nation state. So the inscription of the nation state in the interiority of the community. So these sorts of academic questions can be explored here. And at the same time, because of the viscerality of the material and because of the artistic formations that these nohas or these sort of bodily engagements, this can invite a multidisciplinary kind of work. And I can see that theater or dance practitioners, like say sound artists, space designers, installation artists, they can all work on and with them. So there can be multiple reimagining and restaging of this material, because otherwise it would remain religious material. But there should be a kind of opening of the meaning as well, not going beyond the context but reinterpreting the context as well. So that's what I was thinking, because this archive should be a kind of living archive. This should talk to the public. So
and the community, you had some ideas of the community also re-archiving the material, right?
Yes. So what I observed while working with the community, that because of the physicality of these performances and because of a kind of will to record that is inherent in these Shia communities, they have their own inclination to sort of publicize in whatever sense of their material. Sometimes it's the airing of the nohas, Urdu recorded nohas, or sometimes it is the it is a kind of different sort of performance that they are envisaging. And after the proliferation of social media, what I have been observing is a kind of newer kind of deliberation and intent to change in the materiality and modes of dissemination. So more and more men and women are coming on the social media platforms. They are kind of crossing the boundary of this interiority in a very nuanced way. Perhaps there is no time to talk about that. But that actually creates a sort of scope for the researcher and also the art practitioners to go to the community, perhaps with this material, and think about and conceptualize newer kinds of interfaces, newer kinds of possibilities to create a public discourse of art from this intimate, religious expressions. So that way, the art practitioner can collaborate with this community, and there can be sort of say a reuse, a kind of restaging of the material by using the public space in a different sort of way, because the Shias possess a very precarious position if you think about their position as a sort of minority community within Islam. So that way there can be a different sort of interpretation of the public vis-a-vis their position within Islam and vis-a-vis their position in the broader Hindu-dominated public sphere. So that's what
That's how you see it. Okay. Vishwati?
So Ipshita, I mean, taking the cue from Arundhati's question regarding the afterlife, I really would like to know from you what were the most challenging aspects of your project, rather from the ethnographic perspective, documenting and therefore archiving the Karbala narratives, if you can share.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Vishwati, for this question. This is actually the question for me. This remained the question for me. And as I have already mentioned in my, presentation, I would rather be, mentioning 4 points here. That is the logic of the sacred. The second one is the ethics of privacy. Third one is the technical issue. And the fourth one is my own affective issue as an ethnographer. So there is the logic of the sacred. Perhaps that is inviolable, but there can be sort of, ethnographic ethical negotiation with it, which I had to make. So it kind of took me long, perhaps years, to build up a, relationship of trust and bonding, so that they can give this, they can open the, treasure trove of this material, they can open the interiority of their performances to me, just to be a part of that I could participate. That came from the community's decision, from these women's decision. So that way it took time to build up, to become a participant. And then I myself had to understand the ethics of privacy. Of course, I was very much tempted to record everything that was happening in front of me. And there were scope, to record things in secrecy, like to leave the camera like that while, the camera lens is open, and record things which are not supposed to be recorded. But that way it was a constant, self-reflexive journey to understand what is sacred for the other, what is sort of non-transgressible for the other. So that way it was a personal growth as well. And the third point is the technical issue. That is, once I was, sharing these photos in an academic forum, and someone from the audience asked me that many a times you used a top angle shot. So we generally, we the students of visual culture, we the students of material culture, we know that this top angle shot, this actually entails certain sort of gaze, that is the gaze of the dominant, which inferiorizes the subject of, vision, which inferiorizes the subject of, of research. But I then explained that no, actually it was a corner that I had to, where I had to stand. And when actually women, sat, and you have already seen in the visuals that they were concentrating, they were like taking their own space to, to hold their foreheads and to, to rhythmically beat their foreheads, then there was no option other than to stand at the corner. So that way, if I wanted to record, I only had the top angle shot. So there I always had to sort of self-censor and cultivate my own ways of creating that ethic. Sometimes if I needed to explain, I did that at the time of presentations. And then the affective issue, that is, as a participant, many a times I felt like crying because the sermon was so hypnotic as a performance, and I cried. And then I stopped recording. Then I collected myself, and I, regained myself of the researcher. Then it was a kind of ambivalence till date. After so many years, till 10, 11 years of close proximity with this kind of majlis, morning rituals, it still brings, tears to my eyes, and then I collect myself. So it was a kind of very ambivalent position between my objective self of the scholar and then the self, the participant self. So these are the ethnographic things I have been grappling with, and I have been, looking at to create my own theory of ethnography in the city with the religious material. Thank you.
Thanks, Epsita. I was wondering, just looking at Abul, he's a photographer, and he's been listening to Epsita's struggle with the documentation, the photography part. Abul, I wanted to bring you in here in the conversation and ask you, so, actually for both Epsita and Abul, you'll be happy to know that in a couple of years, once we have a little more material online that we've processed, IFA is going to, with support from the Indorama Charitable Trust, put out project grant, sort of grant and project money. So we'll invite researchers and artists to come and do what they want to do with this material. So I was wondering, Abul, your material, how do you see people use it? Like, suppose this grant was to go out and people wanted to work with your material. What do you see in terms of possibilities that the kind of work that you have given to the IFA archive, what kind of projects could it lead to help with that you foresee, if you were to imagine such projects?
First of all, it is not I work as not as an archiving material to everybody can use. It is actually my self-expression.
Right.
And it is an artist practice. I make this kind of images. So first of all, I don't know about what is the action, but at the same time, there are a few. Yesterday also, one researcher came to me to ask about my work, and he's also doing with this Devi, this Kali cult, and all kind of things, which is now very much difficult to handle. So I was doing this thing for a quite long time, and he wanted to know how it is possible with this nowadays. These political changes are very heavily, like anything, such things you cannot touch anymore. So he wanted to ask can I use some images for his essays, or his book coming out, he have a very difficult to go there and photograph nowadays, because everything is under, even though this temple which is I show you, that are now it is totally different, because in 20 years after, you will look sociologically, anthropologically, everything is very different. You cannot enter there. You go with the camera immediately to the saffron people come and catch you, and it is so mess now, this whole kind of scene. So I said to him, okay, you use, I can give you permission to use some of them. So same time, the other friend of mine, Tulasi, made a movie with all this project, it's called Excavator of Image. She made a movie, and also she made a individual piece of analytical pieces, which is the photographs are how to read photographs of Abul. Like that, many people are already using this thing. Many people are using, and many different way. Like some people are academically using, some people are artistic, they made one short film on that. I can also maybe give you the link of that short film, and you can watch. So it is wonderfully made. It is not very professionally, it's not very sleek, but it is content wise is good. Like that, if it is not damaging for my artwork, or my perception, not misusing my ideas, I am ready to share with people, because I believe on a community, art community should use this kind of thing, basically. But I don't know how people use this. So nowadays,
of course, they will have to take your permission,
for permission, and
it
can be very, very tangible thing. It can be used anyway. Pugar is now, it is completely changed. Completely changed, new MLA there, they are closed down all the temples. It was all free one time. Now you cannot go inside. And, so this document, which is I have, even though you can call it as a document, as a photograph. So it is very valuable for, the 10 years after down the line, it will be the only image you can available,
Yeah.
So these are the things now. Like all this project, which is a last, I started 1999. Now it is 22 years. It's a big change we face India gone through. So these are the things going to be anyway. You cannot stop to say to people to not use. But these are the only imageries that you can available,
Yeah, sure. So Abul, as you said, I mean, the very idea behind the archive is not only researchers, also common people can come and engage with the archival materials or artifacts. One fascinating aspect in your project, which fascinates me, is how you engage the common people of the village of Pampuha. So, my question comes from that. That how was your proposal to model for your visual essay received by the locals, and how did the entire process of convincing the community go about in Pampuha?
So this I had 3 years of my hard work. I was keep on going there. I was talking to the community heads there, having a meeting, and my photographs, you look, it is none of them are not candid shots. It is the subject, no, I am photographing. Because if they have any objection, they can object that time itself. It is not like a street photographer coming and photographing things. It is deliberate thing, I am making portraits and I'm say to them to act in front of my camera. So I'm getting permission from them, because all my models, I have a permission. I have a signed paper with them. Now, I don't know, still last year also, one fellow called me from Puar, can you come? Because, I have a big connection with them. Last 2 years, I stayed there because, every day they are looking me with a camera, because, I don't use a small camera. I use a very big, large format camera. I keep somewhere, 100 people around comes immediately. So I cannot hide anything. I'm just open, so that, nobody can claim that, I will sneak to somebody's house or something. I photograph. Even one time, I had a very interesting story. I photographed a boy, which is he was naked. He was naked, and I don't know whom to ask to me to photograph. I want to photograph him. So I asked his father, can I photograph? He said, okay, you can photograph. So the boy started crying, and this mother came. Mother said, very upset, why you are photographing. So I said, no, I'm not photographing. Like that, so many incidents like that. So nowadays, that practice not at all with the photographers. See, this kind of, they are all, many of them are the street photographers. The Brazon came to India. He started doing all kind of this street photography, and it was very fashionable. Everybody is now using that kind of style, and they don't understand that people's, privacy and all these kind of questions are there. That is still, it's very valuable questions. Basically, you cannot do such things anymore in West. In Paris and all, you cannot photograph anyone in the street. They will call the police immediately. So here also, if you go to Banaras, Varanasi, you cannot photograph like that anymore, because there's no police, but there is a gundas there. They will come to you to stop you to photo. Otherwise, you have to pay them money. This is the scene now. So it is generally, you look the photographs. Each ones are looking to me. Means they know I am photographing. Means I get permission from them. That's why it is all happen like that. Except that the first part, that was 21 years, 21 years old. So that time I was not concerned about all this kind of thing. But after that, I start reading, and my education, everything stopped me to do this. I always, ask people and get permission to them. So this is why all of them are look like that. Everything looking into my camera.
Thanks, Abul. I have one more question for Epsita. And you mentioned in your earlier response about how artists and scholars could engage with this material in different ways. Now, one of the things that was behind the making of the IFA archive was also that generally scholars use archives as part of their practice. Academic institutions train people in how to use archives, the ethics of it, the methodologies, etc. And if you walk into any archive today, and if you see a person sitting there and using that archive, 9 out of 10 times it will be somebody who is a scholar or a researcher. Art practitioners, the use of archive is much less. It's new. A lot more people are using archives today than they did before, probably, but it's still new. And in another program that IFA runs, which is the Archive and Museums program, where we engage with very specific archives and museums and invite people to work, we see that mostly scholarly projects come for archives, and the art curational projects come for museums. So this distinction is quite noticeable. So I was just wondering if you can share with us a little bit about what you think or imagine artists or scholars, how could they work differently with your material, or what would they get differently from your material?
Yes, there can be different avenues for the exploration of this kind of material, but at some points, actually they intersect. Especially when we talk about how to use this kind of material. So that way, in the academic practices, the a new notion about knowledge is emerging, like religion to be read as a part of the public sphere, religious expressions to be read in terms of material culture and interpretive to the bigger dynamics of the notion of the body, the notion of the processes of modernity, and perhaps to understand the different definitions of modernity in our context, and also to understand the very precarious connection between the state and the privacy of religion. So that way, that kind of theoretical, very crucial theoretical questions can be addressed by exploring this kind of, archive that is kept there in the IFA. And always in our academic practices, religion and the study of urbanity, religion and the study of the community processes, they stand as, as antithetical and antagonistic spheres. So when we read, say, some material on the economic or socio-cultural dimension of a community, then the religious inclinations or religious expressions remain outside of the discussion. That that remained within autonomous field of discipline like religious studies, like ritual studies. But this kind of material, in terms of academic discourses, can create a bridge, which is very new. This kind of theoretical intervention is very new, perhaps the last 20-25 years old. So, and it's yet to be explored in the Indian context. So how to understand, and I think this is a kind of pressing question in front of us, how to understand and read our public sphere, how to understand religiosity in terms of the bigger projects of nation making, bigger projects of the making of the public, and how to intervene into the relationship between the state and religion, a person, individual with religious moorings, and and a kind of neutral space called the public. So this kind of academic practices can open up a scope for to redo certain prevalent ideas in academia as well. And if we talk about, say, the artistic community, so here it is not a neutral material, but a kind of position that I have been speaking throughout. That is, it is not some archival material, it's not item, it's not a kind of a categorized items. So the researcher, so the art practitioner should have an understanding of the theoretical ethical position of the ethnographer. So I'm looking forward to a newer kind of collaboration between the researcher and the art practitioners, the artistic fraternity. So that way, like I just want to add on something to this, like by traveling to by visiting the Imambaras, I have inculcated a habit. I think this should be shared at this platform. That is, without a hijab, I do not feel comfortable to visit an Imambara, even if it's not my ethnographics free. If I cross an Imambara, I feel uncomfortable if I'm not wearing a hijab. So that way, this kind of, sensibility, if I can coin it like that, this kind of mentality I have acquired after walking, say, for 10, 11 years in this path. So when an art practitioner is coming, then he or she should be informed about this. Because again, I want to repeat, these are not neutral materials. These are not neutral cultural materials. So that's what comes in my mind.
Thanks, Epsita. Actually, you raise some very interesting questions. And I mean, of course, we don't have the time for getting into deeper discussions, but I think what this material also does is, and we all know the recent conversations and debates we have been having right here in Karnataka about a young woman wearing a hijab in an educational context, and the huge uproar that has come up around that discussion on again on the expression of religiosity within certain kinds of public stroke private spaces, and how does one define those spaces, who runs those spaces, what rules. And you use this word neutral for public space, but does the state at all encourage neutrality, or is neutrality only a kind of ruse for dominant cultures to prevail? These are also questions that one will ask in this area. And this kind of material can be very interesting to spark those kind of arguments, conversations, discourse building, if one might, around this area of urbanity, expressions of religiosity, and its relationship to state and people. So, so thank you for that, for opening up just so many strands. Yeah.
Thank you, Epsita. Actually, my question is from a different perspective. I want to ask you from the gender studies perspective. In your research, when you were going to these imambaras and you are talking with the community, the Shia community, what is the gender ratio in participation in the majlises during Muharram, you find? And can we use the Muharram rituals which you documented in our archives as a primary source to better understand the patterns of gender interactions within the Shia community itself?
Yes, that's a very important question. Thank you, Vishwadip, for that. So as we can see from the visibility of the participation in the Ashura procession, that is the 10th of Muharram, on the streets, you would see that it's extremely gender segregated. It's only the men who are active, who are chanting, who are beating the chest. Sometimes there is khun matam. Women are there, of course, they are visible, but they are not performing the ritual as the active, active agents. But inside the imambaras, they, perform the matam, there are the sermon sessions. So their male performances, male majlises and female majlises, they are equally active. And from my observation, I can say that in 2009-10, when I started visiting the imambaras, then the participation of women in the social media platforms, in other sorts of public discourses were very less, almost non-existent. And there was a kind of demarcation of the private and the public in terms of the use of the social media. So the women's quarters were left to the use of, to the reiteration of the older nohas, older forms of majlises, as if at the beginning of nationalism in 19th century, the way there was a spatial distinction between the public and the private as embodied in the gender discriminated spaces, as if you can read that in that kind of demarcation of the spaces. But this is a kind of what I can say, unilinear understanding of the division of the spaces, because we need to place it in the bigger framework of identity formation of the Shias, their connection with pan-Shia kind of discourse disseminated through the social media. So a particular imambara I have been visiting for the last 10 years, there you can see there was a space of majlis equally shared by the men and the women of the community. But gradually we can see a kind of more prolific, expansion of the architecture, where a separate floor for the female majlis was assigned. So apparently it is a kind of reassertion of the gender segregation, and it is a kind of reformulation of the gendered privacy of women. But if you look at how women are coming and using the space, that can give us a very important cue to open up a discussion of gendered access, and perhaps a new discourse in feminism. Like, women are coming from different classes, and some women belonging, say, to the lower professional groups, they use that sacred space as their space of leisure. They come, they chat, they try to catch nap, which that kind of space and that kind of access to leisure is actually unavailable in their own households. So that way I actually invited myself to look at this space from a different perspective, not only as a sacred space, but as a sort of interface between the lived, very contextualized class expression of these women and their access and new kind of use of these spaces. So that way, there are several possibilities if we look at these spaces, gender demarcated spaces, from the domain of gender and also from the domain of feminist studies. And I have already published a few articles on that. I can share the links with you.
Yep. Thank you, Epsita.
That was a great question.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so Abul, I have a question. Then after that, we will open to the audiences. Abul, my question is twofold for you. The first one is, during your photographic exhibition, or when you were documenting the local people in Pompuhar, what, in your opinion, is the biggest challenge or obstacle you faced while documenting the local people? And what do you think that IFA could do to make the archive more accessible to a larger number of people with the images you generated in our archives, which are now with our archives? So if you can please.
I didn't get you really. What is your asking? I didn't get you.
Okay.
Means what kind of like public I can tell you one thing. When I was exhibiting in not only Puhar, I exhibited in Cochin, I exhibited in Thrissur. These are all like unconventional places I exhibit. Like some exhibitions are in one home in Thrissur. The other things are all like one mansion in Puhar, old mansion in Puhar, and hundreds of people came and watched this. I never exhibited like that, because I never expected like that. This much whole village. It was a queue in that bank club. And people are coming and coming and coming again coming. They were looking these photographs, and they thought they are very ugly people. They look this and they say to me, so I am so beautiful like this, because like that people have a very generous, and women, men, everybody came, and their husbands and all, they look very beautiful. So I said, you people are very beautiful people. So before they thought about, we are very ugly black people, black color. We are farmers, we are fishermen. We are not like anyone. So like that kind of things are one thing there. So IFA can also like open this archives to public. I think it will be very fantastic thing to they can use it. What Epsita says like that. This can be have so many layers of interesting history behind, because I have a very difficulty to make understand this epic and this poetry. It's only like a very regional thing. So many people not to know about this poetry and this text and this situation. But it is, you look in southern India, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and part of Karnataka and Andhra. Basically this book is a style book for a ruler. And the chastity, like virtue, and like how to control the economy, because like this maritime era, the men are go to one place to other place and for the trade, the women are here. So like they wanted to their wealth to protect, the state wanted to protect their wealth, because this money should not go to other places, because the men are very, polygamy was very high in those times. So like men take money and this money, so they make this style book and radically change the community and socially. So that very important. Still you can look the Southern Indian women's morality is based on this book. So like layers and layers, because I am not an academician. I am not talking about like the theorize all this kind of thing, but people can do that. So this archives help like to them to theorize that. They can look what is that. The sari came to like Southern India. It is basically the Ravi Verma brings the sari to our god and goddesses, to wear sari from Maharashtra or like some other places. So you can look that kind of imageries, in that, where is the sari? You don't see many sari wearing people in rural Tamil Nadu. They have a different kind of wearing style, they wear, blouse and sari together, like, Maharashtra. So it is a lot of material, lot of layers to study, and, and the visual anthropology is the one good section for, like to look this document. They can more than an art. It is for me, it is I made as an art piece. But, it have versatile usage for that. That's a interesting part of this photographic images.
Right.
Thanks, Abul.
So you can.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Bishop, we want to, I think for time, looking at the time, maybe we should move to there are some audience questions.
Yes. So there are a couple of questions I'll quickly ask. So Dipanjana Ali asked Ipshita that how did witnessing the morning rituals affect you personally, and did you find any striking differences between the rituals performed by women vis-a-vis the ones performed by men? Anything that you hadn't anticipated?
A part of this question, thank you for the question. So a part of this question has already been responded by me, but I want to add, I want to respond to the gender perspective of the Majlis performances. That is, as these spaces of performance are extremely gender segregated, I am not allowed to witness to the male Majlises. But as it is now being recorded, and many male members of the community who are the social media users, they actually publish them, post them on their social media walls. So now there is a little bit fluidity, and as I there is a certain sort of familiarity after all these years. Now they say that yes, at some places, not everywhere, you can enter and stand or sit at a corner. So the difference is, at the male majlises, especially if we talk about Kolkata, the structure of the majlis is extremely strict. That is, there will be the sermon in the beginning, which will be presided by some Urdu speaking Maulana, and after this, after this performance, there will be the majlis, that is the reading of the Noha by beating the chest, and you would see that it is always susceptible to to various influences. Now it's the proliferation of social media, so you get the body language, you see the body language, the patterns of response, you see the tonalities, you see even the emulation of the words and the new creation of the lyrics. They're all changing and changing in response to the sort of non-Indian, if we can say, culture of Noha reading, especially those who are being published from, say, Iran, from, say, Pakistan. So these Urdu Nohas from Pakistan and some Persian Nohas from Iran, they are being emulated, both their style and their wordings, they are being emulated by the local regional communities, not only in terms of the textuality, but also in terms of the viscerality, in terms of the performative modalities. So sometimes once an old member of the community told me that, of course, there is Josh in this kind of, there is prowess of mourning, there is a prowess of grieving. But what the regional Shias do, their prowess is determined with the intensity of pain. But that, aged person demarcated this kind of, definition of pain with a more Joshila, more sort of, heroic kind of expression of pain that these regional Shias are receiving from the Noha styles of Noha reading, especially emanating from Pakistan. So that way, my self as a scholar actually, tries to contextualize this. That is the position of the Shias in, say, Pakistan vis-a-vis as a sort of minority community, and the position of the Shias in India and also in Bengal has other, specific kind of context. So we can talk about the, the phenomenon called the expression of pain, the embodiment of pain connected with new textualities from these contexts as well. And women majlises where this kind of, I would say rigor, this kind of bodily passion is absent in Kolkata. But if you go to the district, especially if you go to South 24 Parganas and North 24 Parganas, their Shia community actually, hold the lower economic groups. Actually, Shias come from the lower economic groups, especially, in the districts. So there, I would say there, the video that I have already shared with you, there you could see the intensity of, expression. You could see the power of the body to interpret pain. So that way, it has some kind of, demographic difference, demographic diversity, and also class-wise difference within. So it is multifarious, if I can comment, within
Thank you,
gender.
Epsita. And thank you, Abul, for such an engaging evening and for enriching us with such a wonderful talk. I'd also like to thank everyone who participated and for being a patient audience who has made this session fulfilling with interesting questions. The IFA archive will be back with our next event, a talk series by the end of this month. The very first talk of the series, titled The Date with the Archive, and Navtej Singh Johar will present his artistic engagements as a dancer and a choreographer with the archives and archival artifacts. So do join us next on March 29th, Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. Also, do join us for our next project showcase, where the projects supported by IFA are presented by the project coordinators. The next project showcase is titled City Dialogues, an encounter with the everyday by Bhaven Shukla and Surajit Shorkar. So also join us on Thursday, March 31st at 6:30 p.m. And at the very end,
Vishwadeep, there's one thing I wanted to say,
yes,
that there are a couple of questions that we haven't been able to answer because of lack of time, but and both are from Epsita. Epsita, if you be so kind, if we send it to you, and we have the email IDs of the people who have asked. So if you can just respond to them, it'll be really good. We couldn't take.
I'll be very glad to do that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'll be sharing them. Yeah. So thank you both, Abul and Epsita.
Thank you very much, and hope to see you at the next series. There'll be many of these archive events coming up. So we hope, and the recording of this, Vishwadeep, will also go up on our YouTube.
Yes, on our YouTube channel. Yes.
So if you enjoyed our conversation, but if you have friends who you think would like to listen in, please share the link with them and write to us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Abul.
Thanks.
Good evening.